Well, it's clear that the protests, which started over higher bus fares, have snowballed into a much bigger movement. Joining me in the studio now is Roberto Jaribe, who's Brazil's ambassador to the UK. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. Presumably no word on the meeting here in London.
That's correct.
Do you have any sense of what was going to be discussed as they went in?
Well, I think there are several issues to be discussed. Of course, there's the security issue, which is very important. When you have more than 1 billion people going to the streets, as you showed, it is bound to create some difficulties, and we have to address that first and initially. And when to avoid this becoming of a riotous nature, it is not of a riotous nature, but we must make sure that it doesn't become of a riotous nature.
And that's the problem now, isn't it? Because it started off peacefully and the police held back and the government talked about a respect for the expression of democracy. But when it tips into this violent phase, as we've started to see, the police are reacting. But when the police react, you get more violence in response. We've seen that happen today. So how do you handle this sort of situation?
Well, it's a very delicate balance, and it's not very simple. But as everybody believes
You're
that
not
the
doing
protesters...
either at the moment. You're not committing either way.
Well, the protesters are essentially very peaceful in nature. Of course, there's a dynamic in mass manifestations besides a group of people that may infiltrate and do something different. So we have to be careful about all of those dimensions. But essentially, we want to protect the protesters, protect property, which has been damaged yesterday, as you have seen, and make sure that this continues to be on a very rightful, peaceful manifestations.
As the police do push back, it does create a more sense of anger. And we've seen over these past few days how the concerns have been expressed in a variety of groups. I mean, what are you addressing here now? You initially thought it was bus fares, but it's not anymore, is it? So how on earth can you address this range of issues?
Well, I think you put your finger on the very delicate point, because one of our ministers who is dealing with these issues of civil societies said it would be presumptions on our part to believe that we know what's taking place.
So the first thing is to find out what their concerns are, and efforts are being made that way?
Certainly are, and of course it's very diffuse. So we can perceive perhaps a certain uneasiness with, for instance, political representation.
Yes.
They don't really feel represented by the political parties.
The protesters. I haven't seen them going into government buildings and holding panel discussions.
Who are the leaders?
Well,
who
I
are
don't know.
the yes, again, this is a very dynamic process that is happening.
You're talking to them. You're not talking to anyone. You're just
we're trying to work out what's going on, because whom do we speak to? Who are the leaders of the process?
Well, I don't know. That's got to be the problem.
Well, there's no such thing.
So you're going through the protesters, are you trying to work out who to speak to?
It's a mobilization that has a different dynamic. In fact, it's not a Brazilian thing. It's a global thing. And it has to do with different media, especially the social media, which is very capable of generating this sort of effort.
We spoke to a young lady yesterday who had a group with 75,000 followers. So effectively, you have to go and engage with people like that. Is an effort being made that way?
I think it is, and we have many channels for that purpose. Of course, you know, one of the problems is that the normal democratic channels that are established are not followed by these people. They don't feel represented adequately in these channels. They want to create something new. We have to understand that and see how it goes. It's a very
it's a case of identifying who to speak to, and then the government's doing that, is it?
Of course, but again, we have an established democratic process. Yes. Changes have to be made through the established democratic process, and we have to follow that route. But it's important to understand the message and to find what they want and to have a dialogue established.
Were lessons learned from the bus fare issue? Because you thought it was a single issue and there was a U-turn on that, and it kind of backfired, didn't it? Because the protest got worse afterwards. There was a moment of celebration, of course, but... Well,
you know, there is agglomerations in Brazil are very common. For the New Year's, for Carnival, for football stadiums, and mass protests are seen every day. This has acquired a new dimension. We have to understand that. But it's very volatile. You don't know exactly where you're going to end.
FIFA has said the World Cup must continue there. It's one of the points that people do bring up, because it seems to sort of encapsulate the problems. You know, money being spent on the World Cup when it should be spent on schools and hospitals, when local hospitals aren't that great, they argue. How do you handle this World Cup issue? Because it does, at the moment, seem insensitive.
Well, first of all, the investments for the World Cup have already been made. They are there. They have been very much utilized. The World Cup is prepared. We are ready to host the World Cup. We're hosting right now the Confederations Cup. In spite of the fact that 1 million people were in the streets yesterday, we had several games going without any difficulties, which shows that we can cope with this issue.
Okay, Ambassador, thank you very much indeed for your time.
My pleasure.